I'm Emma. Since my father passed away in a traffic accident 20 years ago, I have been living modestly with my mother, who works as a nurse. I met my boyfriend Christopher while I was working part-time at a restaurant. Our relationship started as a regular customer and staff, and gradually, we began to be drawn to each other. Handsome, serious, and kind to everyone, he is my pride and joy. After dating smoothly for 3 years and hinting at marriage but not getting a proposal, I decided to propose to him on my 27th birthday. The result was a huge success, surprisingly easy. Right after that, we went to a jewelry store where he presented me with an engagement ring and formally proposed. Even now, more than a month later, I find myself looking at my engagement ring and smiling whenever I have a moment to spare. In the midst of this happiness, there's just one concern. It's that we haven't set a date to meet Christopher's parents. When we first started dating, I remember him mentioning that his parents were in San Francisco. From here to San Francisco is quite a distance, and it takes time. There are work commitments, and I want to get this sorted out soon. Meeting my family went smoothly, so I'm even more anxious about his. Have you contacted your parents? When can they make time for us? He was evasive in his response. It's like he doesn't want me to meet them. I gave him a stern look and asked, "You're not going to tell me that you weren't serious about us after all this, are you?" "Of course not. It's just that my parents are a bit unusual." "But that doesn't mean we can get married without saying anything, right? We have to think about the future." He sighed as if I resigned to my words. "All right, I got it. I'll make up my mind. Can you take a couple of days off soon?" I checked my schedule and told him the dates, and he nodded quietly in agreement. 3 days later, while drinking coffee at a cafe, he showed me a page from a travel website. "What's this?" "The Royal Harmony Luxury Hotel. A classy and beautiful hotel with luxurious moments and delicious food." Wow, the price for one night is like a month's rent. What's this about? "That's the hotel we'll be staying at when we go to meet my parents." "But what? Why?" I spat out the coffee I was drinking in surprise. It was too early for a honeymoon, even though we were engaged. I couldn't believe these words were coming from him, a frugal man who hardly splurges and is still paying off his university scholarship. "Don't worry about the lodging cost. I'll cover that. But I have to ask you to split the travel expenses." "Wait, hold on. We can stay at a budget hotel. It doesn't have to be somewhere so fancy for meeting your parents." "It's my parents' house." "Yeah, I know your parents are in San Francisco, but we don't need to stay at such a fancy hotel." "That Royal Harmony I mentioned earlier? It's my parents' place." "What?" "The manager of this hotel is my second mom, and the person in charge of purchasing and cooking is my real father." No way. I couldn't believe he was the heir to a luxury hotel. The thought of marrying into a wealthy family excited me for a moment, but his expression was gloomy. "Huh? Second mom? Does that mean they remarried?" "Yeah, saying my parents might be a bit of a stretch. They divorced when I was in the middle school. Dad, a chef with no interest outside of work, took me in. Then he started working as a live-in at the restaurant when he was appreciated by the young manager. My now mom didn't know that. Now that I think about it, he hardly ever talked about his parents or family. According to him, they remarried when he was in high school. At first, she was a kind mom, but after he said he didn't want to take over the hotel, she started treating him coldly. Moreover, since I went to university, I wasn't allowed to stay at a hotel for free since I wasn't working there. When I go home, I have to get a room like any other guest." "But you don't have to stay there, right? You could just visit for the day." "I think so too, but it can't be helped. Like you said, without following the rules, my mom, being busy, won't even make time to see us. My dad doesn't even have a mobile phone, so inevitably, I have to contact my mom." At that moment, I regretted carelessly saying I wanted to meet his parents, but it was too late. I couldn't bring myself to suggest canceling it now, after he had made up his mind and even booked the reservation. There was a turmoil inside me, but still, a manager of a luxury hotel should be all about hospitality. Surely, if we hear their side, things will make sense. I decided to brush off the looming anxiety with positive thoughts. On the day of our stay, the weather forecast was wrong, and it was an unfortunate rainy day. Without a convenience store in sight to buy an umbrella, we got a bit wet despite taking taxis. The hotel we arrived at had a grand entrance, and as I walked in, I was awestruck by its elegance, stopping in my tracks. Then I heard a mocking laugh. "What a sight! Coming into our establishment dressed like that!" Turning around, I saw a middle-aged woman in a suit, smiling elegantly. "Thank you for coming all this way. I am Grace, the manager here and the mother of the young man you see there." Grace. As I bowed to introduce myself, she let out a small shriek. No, please don't bow in that wet rat state. You're dripping dirty raindrops." "What? Could you please dry off? It's unsightly." Dirty? Unsightly? Even if that was the case, we were paying guests at this hotel, whether we were her son's girlfriend or not. Is this how you speak to guests? Wouldn't you normally offer kind words or at least promptly guide us to our room or bath? I was stunned by her words, which I never imagined hearing. Then another guest entered from behind us. Dressed head to toe in brand-name clothing, they were the picture of celebrities. Grace instantly approached them with a smile, her attitude changing dramatically. "Thank you for coming from so far in this bad weather. Let me guide you to your room. May I take your luggage?" The contrast in her behavior was stark. Christopher seemed unfazed, as if he had expected this. While I stood there dumbfounded, he completed a check-in. "We have a reservation for Christopher, the cheapest room for one night." "Right, Christopher, in our most affordable room." Why emphasize that? Before I could complain, a listless employee appeared. "I'll take your luggage. This way, please." As we moved towards the elevator, an employee's voice stopped us. "That elevator is for VIPs only." "How are we supposed to get there then?" "For your plan, please use these stairs." We were guided to an emergency staircase. My irritation was definitely rising. Upon reaching our room, the employee roughly placed our bags down. "Dinner is at 7 in your room. The bathhouse is open until 2 a.m. and from 5 a.m. Checkout is at 9 a.m. There is a pamphlet in the room with more details. Call the internal line if you need anything else." With that, he yawned and left. What was that treatment? I'm appalled at a luxury hotel like this. He took a towel out of the closet and handed it to me. I was finally able to dry my wet hair. Oh, it smells moldy despite being new. I wonder when it was last exchanged. The room itself is grand, but there are dust bunnies here and there, and unknown hair in the wash basin. And for that price, a national chain budget hotel would be much more comfortable. Hey, does your dad knows about the manager's tyranny? I've talked to him about it once, but he didn't seem convinced, maybe because he's never seen it. He's either in the kitchen all day or out for purchasing. He looks down. It's all just a facade. You're surprised, right? More than you imagined. Sorry. Do you think I want to inherit a hotel like this? No way. Why doesn't such a terrible place go out of business? That's the mystery. When I looked into it, there are hardly any bad reviews. Most of the main customers are wealthy, celebrities, and mass media who receive hospitality worthy of a luxury hotel. It's frustrating. What hospitality? It's all just a facade. As I thought of taking a photo as proof, I turned on my mobile phone camera. Just then, I heard a cough from behind. Turning around, there was the manager, Grace, frowning. When did you arrive? Didn't you read our brochure? Unlike other hotels, our building alone is of value. Unauthorized photography is prohibited. Weren't you here to greet us? Her tone suggested we were the ones lacking common sense. It's more questionable for you to enter without permission, I retorted. You're the ones trying to break the rules here. I'm just doing my job as a manager. Now, take a seat. Dad is busy with dinner preparation, so I'll be the one to decide whether I like you or not. Grace forced her way into the room and gestured for me to sit across the desk from her. Her sharp gaze was intimidating. I glanced at Christopher, and he subtly nodded. I straightened my back and sat down in front of Grace. Grace began to interrogate me about everything from how we met to my upbringing and lifestyle. I don't live a life I'm ashamed to talk about. I told her honestly about growing up supported by my mom and her relatives, that I continued to work part-time at the restaurant because my main job as a cook wasn't enough, and how important he is to me. After listening to everything, Grace frowned and turned to him. So you were serious about not inheriting the hotel? Bringing such a poor, common girl here? What?
Hey, stop it! That's rude. After all those questions?
Well, it's the truth. If only she had some beauty. I don't know about being a cook, but her hands are rough, nails short, and she lacks flair. I couldn't help but make a displeased face. It's true, my hands are rough from work, and I don't wear much makeup. Being ridiculed like this felt awful. Grace glanced at me and then slammed the desk, staring at him. If you insist on marrying her, I'll disown you. Bring someone poor into our family? Unbearable. He looked angrier than I'd ever seen. As we sat, speechless, Grace looked at her watch and turned to me with a polite smile. Become a guest worthy of our hotel first. Now, I'll return to my work. Standing up, she turned her back on us and then added, Maybe you should head back soon. Poor single-parent girl. She laughed with a loud laugh. Stunned, he bowed deeply to me.
I'm so sorry, really.
It's not your fault. Right, he did nothing wrong. In the awkward silence, I slowly began to speak. Hey, if we get married, it looks like you'll be disowned. What will you do? I realized I had asked a difficult question. He thought for a while, then sighed deeply and looked me straight in the eyes. I still want to marry you, he said firmly. I smiled at his words. I understood his feelings. We could just go home now, register our marriage, and never see Grace again, just as she wished. But I'm not so kind as to back down quietly after all that. Beneath my smile at him, a flame of anger was burning. I have an idea. Will you help me? A luxury hotel, getting carried away and forgetting it's in the business of hospitality. As a manager, Grace should remember her place. I immediately called my uncle in San Francisco and explained the situation. He readily agreed to help. After making various arrangements, we left the hotel and checked into a budget hotel nearby. Now, watch the finale. It's going to be interesting. The next day, while waiting for my uncle's call and finishing our sightseeing in San Francisco, my mobile phone rang at a cafe. Here, the message of anger from my uncle. We paid and left the cafe, heading to his family's luxury hotel. As planned, I separated from him and looked around the hotel lobby. It was almost empty due to the time, and my uncle, dressed in tired clothes, stood out. He seemed to have booked a room as planned, in the attire I requested. He must have received the same discriminatory treatment from the manager. Sitting in the lobby, he looked displeased. Uncle! As I ran to my uncle, Grace, who was passing by, sharply commented, Oh my, is that man an acquaintance of yours? No wonder he doesn't fit in our hotel. A luxury hotel like ours is too high a threshold for commoners like you. She laughed mockingly. But I quietly stood beside my uncle, who was glaring at her. This man is my uncle. He's like a father to me since mine passed away. Oh, is that so? Grace uninterestedly started rearranging the nearby flowers. More important than flowers, I'm about to teach her about paying attention to guests. And he works as an editor-in-chief for a travel magazine. What? The flower in Grace's hand snapped in half. My uncle stood up calmly and handed Grace a business card.
Sorry for the late introduction. I'm Daniel.
Handling Traveler's Journal.
My dear niece seems to have been under your care.
The editor-in-chief of Journey Explorer? Grace's face went pale, opening and closing her mouth. Journey Explorer is a famous travel magazine focusing on luxury and heritage hotels, featuring interviews with celebrity travelers. It should have been a dream cast for media-loving Grace. Sweating, Grace looked between my uncle and me, forcing a smile. Oh, I had no idea. If I knew, I would have provided service worthy of you too. Let's start over right now.
Manager, so you discriminate against guests based on their appearance and plan?
No, it's just different plans. God in her own words.
But you just said we could start over, didn't you?
Well, it's just that. Under my uncle's questioning, Grace's gaze darted around. My uncle casually took out his mobile phone, doing something while chuckling.
At first, I was skeptical. This hotel had a good reputation in our industry, and we've even featured it once. I was thinking of doing a special feature on it. But it's good I came as she suggested.
Well then. Grace's expression brightened momentarily. What is she misunderstanding? She still doesn't see the reality.
Hold on. Yeah, it's me. Cancel the feature we were planning and call the weekly magazine guy later.
Wait, please! Grace reached out, but my uncle gently removed her hand and hung up, stating calmly,
Part of the blame for letting a so-called luxury hotel like this run wild falls on us, the media. We'll take responsibility.
Leaving a slumping Grace behind, my uncle hurried out of the hotel. Alone in the lobby, Grace's shoulders trembled. It's your fault! What? Suddenly, she grabbed me by the collar with force. A mere cook? Your fault? A poor, unattractive woman for all of this? A mere cook? A hotel's food is one of its main attractions, right? My uncle wrote in his message. The hospitality was lacking, but the food was delicious. Of course it is! We use high-quality ingredients. This is a luxury hotel. People should be grateful just to stay here. I'm the most important person here.
Enough, Grace!
A loud rebuke echoed in the lobby, and turning, I saw him and Christopher's dad in a chef's apron. Oh, why? How long have you been?
I called him from the part about people like you. Been watching since then.
Think you can disrupt work and get away with it? Grace interrogated him, but he just laughed.
I'll be disowned if I marry her, right? Then it doesn't matter to Dad what I do anymore.
He rushed to my side as if to protect me from Grace, who stood there frozen. Only he could influence Kevin. I was right. Kevin, red-faced with anger, glared at Grace.
I have a lot to ask, but first, I didn't know my son was back. I never heard anything about a marriage introduction. What's this about?
I thought I'd meet her first and then...
And just a cook? And high-quality ingredients make it obvious. Have you been belittling my work all along?
You're a cook, aren't you? She's just a part-timer. Grace pointed at me. True, but not the whole story. I do work part-time at a restaurant. See? Not a real cook then! You didn't listen, did you? It's temporary because my main job doesn't yet give me enough leeway. I'm a catering chef. What? I'm just short of funds to open my own place. I create recipes, cook, and serve, and yes, I get paid for it.
I even have regular customers, but I'm working part-time to save up quicker for my own place.
I explained clearly.
She heard part-time and assumed the rest, not listening properly. Oh, well. Not valuing the people in front of you and only cherishing VIP guests is why this happens.
Looking at a speechless Grace, Kevin sighed deeply.
You used to say you wanted to focus in cooking and purchasing, making many customers happy. That Grace is gone. I thought we were working together, but to you, I was just another convenient employee.
Kevin stood in front of Grace, removed his chef's hat, and handed it to her.
If you only want to make certain guests happy, hire a new chef. I can't agree with that mindset.
With that, Kevin disappeared into the back of the hotel, muttering,
Wait! Wait!
Grace hurried after him.
Let's go.
He took my hand, and we left the hotel. That night, we decided to return to our hometown by plane. Later on, Grace's luxury hotel was exposed on TV for discriminating against guests. It also came to light that they had paid to delete negative reviews from customers they discriminated against. At a press conference where Grace apologized, her wedding ring was noticeably absent. I later learned that Grace had taken the college tuition money prepared by Kevin's dad for him and used it for herself. Disgusted by her mockery of chefs and theft, Kevin resigned from his kitchen job and filed for divorce. According to my uncle, once Kevin, the chef, left the hotel's cuisine quality dropped, and the exposure of its inner workings led to a loss of customers. Soon, the hotel closed down. Now, Grace works as a menial worker at a national hotel chain to repay the debt she incurred from mismanagement. Having no experience in other industries, she could only work in a hotel, but couldn't be in front of customers due to her recognizable face. I can't help but smile, imagining the once arrogant manager doing menial tasks and cleaning. Knowing her pride, she must be experiencing a great deal of humiliation. As for me, I successfully registered my marriage with him and had a modest wedding with just close relatives. Despite not knowing Grace's true nature, Kevin, feeling responsible for his son and daughter-in-law's pain, initially refused to attend our wedding. However, he eventually agreed after being persuaded by Christopher. During the wedding speech, I learned that Kevin took custody of his son. He was desperate to raise him alone, working tirelessly to ensure his son's comfortable life. Thanks to me, the gap between father and son had finally started to close, which made me feel both embarrassed and bashful. Later, Kevin started living alone with working at a restaurant, and we began our life together in an apartment near my parents' house. Years later, we invited my uncle to our home. The purpose was to have him, with his discerning taste, sample the menu for the small reservation-only restaurant we planned to open soon. With enough money saved, we were opening a small restaurant while continuing our catering business, intending to quit my part-time job. Our restaurant might not be luxurious, but we hoped to make everyone who visited smile. We wanted to continue leading modest but happy lives, and it would be a joy to help make the lives of those who visited our restaurant a little happier.